Today I want to share with you how to stock your prepper pantry. And this is part 2 of a 3-part series that I'm doing all about the prepper pantry, and it's not to be missed. Hi sweet friends! I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferment, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning about those things, consider subscribing to my channel. And don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. In part 2 of this series, I want to focus on how to stock our prepper pantries with real foods, foods that have the least ingredients as possible and are the least processed as possible. Now, in part 1 of this series, I talked about what exactly a prepper pantry is, as well as why we all need to have one. And if you've not had a chance to see part 1, I'll be sure to put a link to that video in the description underneath this video, so be sure to check out that one. Now, if you've been with me for a little while, you know I often use the term the Four Corners Pantry. But if you're new to that term, what I mean is the 4 parts of a pantry. And one part is your working pantry. That's your closet or cabinet, whatever the case may be, in your kitchen that you access generally on a daily basis. Then part 2 is, or corner 2, is your refrigerator, and then part 3 is your freezer, and then part 4 is your extended pantry. And when we talk about a prepper pantry, we're talking about your extended pantry. An extended pantry is generally where we keep our backup supplies. And basically those are things that we buy each week in addition to whatever we're buying on our regular grocery list. And then we put that in our extended pantry, and then when our working pantry runs low, we basically go shopping, more or less, into our extended pantry to refresh our working pantry. And our extended pantry basically comes in handy as an emergency backup. It can be to help you out when there's illness or job loss or bad weather, or even something like what we're going through now with a national and worldwide emergency. Now, your prepper pantry or your extended pantry is something that you want to build up over time. Each time you do your regular weekly or bi-weekly or monthly grocery shopping, whatever the case may be, that's the time when if you see something on sale, you can get a few extra cans of something, or an extra bag of rice, or an extra bag of flour, whatever the case may be, that you can then put into your extended pantry. And you do this over time so that it's not hard on your budget. And then you make the decision in your mind, do you want to have a 2-week backup supply, a 2-month backup supply, a 6-month backup supply, or a year backup supply? In video 3, I'm going to share with you how to build a year's worth supply in your extended pantry on about $5 extra a week to your grocery budget. Now, as a backup for your working pantry, your extended pantry can also have a section that you devote to what many people call a survival pantry. And that can be part of your extended pantry that has those foods that have very long shelf lives. But don't worry, you don't need to buy any fancy dehydrated foods or freeze-dried foods. There are many foods you can buy right at your grocery store that have very long shelf lives. And I have a video all about that, about what I call forever foods that you can put in your survival pantry, and I'll be sure to link to that video in the description below. But today I just want to focus on that extended part of your pantry that basically serves as a backup to your working pantry. Now, these are all foods that I've bought over time, and I've just taken them out of my working pantry or my extended pantry. And as I said, these are just things that I've purchased. None of this is sponsored. I have no relationship with any of these brands. They're just things that I've purchased over the years and been very happy with the level of quality. Now, when I'm getting ready to do my grocery shopping for my working pantry and those things that I want to also add into my extended pantry, I have a master pantry list that I rely on. And I've just put mine, this is something I've just printed out and I've put it in my notebook and I keep it handy so I know exactly what I need, what I'm low on, so on and so forth. And if you want a copy of that, it's totally free. You can print it out, and I'll be sure to put a link in the description below, and you can print out my pantry list to have as your own copy as well. And something I want to mention about all of this is that as you add to your extended pantry, make sure that anything you buy new, you put in the back, so that as you rotate things out into your working pantry, as your supplies decrease, you're always operating on a first in, first out basis, so that you don't wind up having a lot of expired food in your extended pantry. And one thing I want to share when I talk about real food is that I do try to stock my pantry, my prepper pantry, with foods that are as real or as simple in their preparations as possible. However, I do keep some foods that have more ingredients in them than just the single ingredient. Like, for example, I'll buy a can of pears and these are packed in their own juice, just pears, and that's perfect. That's what I mean when I'm talking about real food. But sometimes I also include what are more, packaged or prepared foods. For example, I'll have a can of baked beans as opposed to having them made homemade, or I'll have some canned soups, or I'll even have some boxed macaroni and cheese. And the reason is I'm the main cook in the family, and if I'm sick, I need to make sure that my family has foods that basically they can just open the cans and in essence, or boil some water, and in essence have foods to eat that don't require a more skilled cooked preparation. So as you're adding to your supplies in your prepper pantry, always keep in mind the things that you and your family like to eat, as well as some foods that are very easy to prepare for those in the household who may not be cooks when the chief cook and bottle washer gets sick. And with foods like this, your more prepared foods, I often keep my eye open for buying these in a bulk package when I'm at a big store like a Costco or a Sam's, because they can be very affordable. The same with baked beans and canned soups. That's a really good, though both of those places are very good places to look for these type of items, and it also helps to keep your costs down. Now, the first area of food that I want to talk about for stocking your prepper pantry is protein. Now, under normal circumstances, you can be buying, fresh chicken, fresh meat, fresh fish, whatever the case may be. But when you shop for things to stock in your prepper pantry or your extended pantry, you want to look for those things that are non-perishable and are good replacements for perishable foods. And in that case, you can look for something like this, canned chicken. And I just bought this at H-E-B. That's my local grocery store. And those of you in Texas will recognize this grocery store, which is like the best grocery store on the planet. But to give you an idea, this has 6 cans of chicken in it, and this at my grocery store was $12. So that works out to $2 a can. And if you take this and some egg noodles and maybe a little of a homemade cream of soup mixture, which I'm going to show you how to make, you can have a wonderful little casserole for not a lot of money. And this is the type of thing that comes in very handy as backup food if you're not able to get to the grocery store, or if your budget, because of some emergency like a job loss, is very tight. Then you've got these non-perishable foods in your extended or your prepper pantry, and you can feed your family. Now, as I said, I spent $12 for this at my grocery store, but I have seen this at Sam's, very similar, their brand, where it's 6 cans like this of canned chicken for around $9. So when you see that in stock there, a lot of canned goods have been out of stock, during this time, quarantine time that we're going through. But if you do come across that, that's a good thing to buy a package of, because it's a little less expensive than what you might find at your local grocery store. Now, for canned fish, I really like to keep some canned salmon on hand. You can make salmon patties, salmon burgers, whatever you call them. They're delicious and they're very easy to make. And one thing I want to mention, I have a lot of videos on how to make meals with all of these things. And I'll be sure to link as many as I can in the description below. And I also have a website by the same name, Mary's Nest, as my YouTube channel. And I'll be sure to link to that. and because I can put a lot more information over on there than the limited space I have in the description. So, but I'll have a link to my website so you can get all the information that you need about all of this. Then some other things that we really like, and again, you know, it's a matter of what your family likes. And what you can do is, before you really need to be in a situation that may be, you know, a small or a larger emergency, is to start trying these things and find out what your family does like. Using canned chicken in a soup or a casserole, trying to make some salmon patties, bringing in some sardines and kippers into the house. Now, I will tell you, if you've never had kippers, these are delicious. And you can just make a meal that my husband and I have made often, is kippers and some rice and some soy sauce. It's wonderful. So I highly recommend trying out kippers. Now, sardines are a little bit of a different story. Sardines can be a little bit more of an acquired taste, but I have a very good recipe for making sardines taste really delicious. And like, I can just eat them on rye bread with some red pickled onions, and I love them. But if you're not a fan of sardines, or maybe you've never tried them before, I'll definitely put the link to the recipe that I have for these, because I've had a lot of people come back to tell me that said, Mary, I trusted you, I tried your sardine recipe, and it came out great, and I really like sardines now. So that's something to think about. And I want to mention, sometimes if you do find that you do like sardines, you can find them sold in these 4-can packs, and they become more reasonably priced. But these type of canned fishes are very reasonably priced. I mean, you can get kippers for maybe $1 a can. So these are the kinds of foods that you definitely want to try to develop a taste for, so that you can have these in your extended pantry. Now, some other canned fish that you definitely want to keep on hand are anchovies. These are wonderful, used in so many different recipes. You can just take 2 of these, or if you have the paste, this works really great too, because you can just squeeze a little out. But if you put a bit of anchovies in with a little bit of olive oil, some garlic, and you saute them in a frying pan, the anchovies will dissolve, and then you can put in some cooked pasta with some vegetables. No one's going to know there were anchovies in there, but the flavor level is really going to be delicious. Plus, these are very rich in omega-3, as are kippers and sardines. And omega-3, as we've learned from scientists, is very good for our health. It's one of those what they call the good fats. So definitely add some anchovies into your prepper pantry, because I think you'll be very happy to have these on hand, especially if you're in a situation where you are relying on your non-perishable foods and you want to add a nice flavor palette to a dish that you're making. Now, certainly it's wonderful to have fresh fruits and vegetables, or as a backup, frozen fruits and vegetables. But when you're stocking the extended or prepper pantry, you need to think of what's non-perishable. Now, over here, I have pears that I've canned myself. And if you do home canning, this is great. But in the event that you don't do home canning, then buying some canned pears, or any canned fruit for that matter, is a wonderful thing to put in your extended pantry. Now, even if you do home canning, I still recommend having some canned food, or in this case canned fruit, as a backup. And the reason is, you may be at a point where you're not able to do some home canning. Either the fruit isn't available to you, or the vegetables, or whatever it is that you want to can just isn't available to you. Or you may not have the power that you need to do your home canning. And having regular plain canned food that you got at the grocery store can be a lifesaver. The same goes for vegetables. Yes, you may like to have fresh string beans, you may home can string beans, maybe ones you grow in your garden, but having some canned veggies that you buy at the supermarket, again, is a good backup. I like to have canned string beans, I also have canned corn, I've got canned mushrooms, and I really like to have canned tomatoes. And I tend generally to buy the crushed tomatoes because they're very easy to work with. And both of these, this is my grocery store's brand, and then this is an Italian brand. Both of these were on sale. And so that's another thing. Whenever I'm shopping for restocking my extended pantry, I always try to look for what's on sale. And also items in jars, like this is a salsa, so I've got that in my extended pantry. So any canned goods that you think your family might enjoy and that can fill the void when you can't have fresh fruits and vegetables, be sure to start adding those into your prepper pantry. Now, I think when a lot of us think of prepping and prepper pantry, we can't help but think of dried beans. And they definitely are something that you want to keep in your extended pantry. They have a long shelf life, and they can really come in handy because they're very filling, they're nutritious, and you can make a meal out of them. However, I also recommend, in addition to stocking dried beans, and you can tell we're in Texas, I got a big bag of pinto beans here. And that's all. This is also my store brand, H-E-B. They also have a brand called Hill Country Fare, and it's very reasonable. As is their regular H-E-B store brand, but both are reasonable. And so whenever I see those at the grocery store, and especially when they're on sale, makes them even more reasonable, I'll just pick up one bag and add it to my backup supply. However, I also recommend getting canned beans. Now, canned beans are a little more expensive, but what if you have a storm and you've lost power? And this can happen I grew up in the East Coast, and we had blizzards and we were out without power sometimes for a couple of days. Here in Central Texas, although we're really not on the Gulf of Mexico, we can sometimes get the tail end of a hurricane that'll come through the Gulf, and we may lose power. So if you've lost power, you don't have the ability to cook your beans. Yes, you can soak them, but you may not be able to cook them. And that's why I always say have some canned beans on hand, because you can do a lot with canned beans. You can just eat them as is. You can mash some chickpeas, and if you have a little tahini, which is sesame paste, you can mix that together and you've got a nice hummus. So there's a lot of things that you can do. So having canned beans, and this is the case for a lot of things. Yes, there are things you can make homemade from starting with very raw ingredients. But if you have no power and you can't cook, canned foods can really save the day. And yes, they are a little more expensive than if you're buying a bag of dried beans that may be $1 or $2. But again, without power, they're going to come in handy. And these, usually I'll look for which ones are on sale. These were actually organic, and this can of chickpeas was on sale for 79 cents. So I got a couple of cans of this for my pantry. And these navy beans, although not on sale, were also 79 cents. And I like to have navy beans because in a pinch, they can make just so many lovely dishes. The chickpeas, as I said, you can make a little hummus. You can also toss them with a little olive oil and a little oregano. And you can do the same with navy beans as well. If you don't have any, because they're very simple, very plain flavor, you can mix them with a lot of different things, and they can be very tasty, especially if you don't have any power, where you can't heat them up and make a nice navy bean soup. Now, in addition to beans, two things that I want to mention are having some dried split peas and some lentils. Lentils and split peas cook up very fast. And what can really be great about these, they're very nutritious. And if you think a storm is coming and you think you might lose power, you can make a nice split pea soup, or you can make a nice lentil soup, fill a big thermos with it, and then you've got some nice hot soup in the event that you don't have the ability to cook. And you don't have to worry about soaking and cooking beans, which can take a lot longer. And along the lines of split peas and lentils, you can also look for some quick cooking grains that have already been par cooked, so when you bring them home, they cook up much quicker than they would under normal circumstances. And this is also from H-E-B. This is the Central Market brand. That's sort of like a little smaller line of grocery stores that they have. But this is 5 grains. It has farro, barley, brown rice, kamut, corrosion wheat, kamut is corrosion wheat, and oats. And this will cook up in like 10 minutes. So this is another great thing to have on hand. These were some that I got at the 365 brand at Whole Foods Market, which is less expensive. And this is barley, peas, and lentils. And this cooks up in 10 minutes. And then again, this is an Italian barley, cooks up in 12 minutes. So these are great to have on hand. They're non-perishable, and they can also cook up quickly. While we're on the subject of things like lentils and split peas and beans, I also want to talk about rice. Now, white rice has a very long shelf life, and you can buy very large bags of it at places like Costco and Sam's, and you can put it in those big 5-gallon food-safe buckets, put in a couple of bay leaves to keep the bugs away, and maybe some food-safe little silica gels to keep any moisture away. And that's a wonderful resource to have in your extended pantry, your prepper pantry. And then as you need whatever amount, you can transfer it to another container in your working pantry. Now, what I've got here are just small bags, but usually what I do is when I'm shopping, whether it's at a Costco or a Sam's and I'm able to buy something in a large quantity that we eat a lot of, great. But I also keep my eye open for coupons that may have smaller amounts, because the coupon is very good and the price of the item is very good, that it actually works out to be the same price or less than if I had bought it in a very large amount. So whenever this type of rice, my husband really likes this jasmine rice, and if this is on sale and it's got a coupon with it, I'll just get a small bag and I'll just pop this into my extended pantry, my prepper pantry, and when I need some rice, I'll just take out the whole bag. And then I don't have to disturb my 5-gallon food safe bucket at that particular time, and I can just keep that sealed, expose it to less oxygen, and extend its shelf life. So that's something to keep in mind. Really do your price comparisons and your price shopping and look for coupons. And that's the same with this rice. They had a coupon for it. Now, this is a brown rice. Brown rice, the shelf life is not as long because it does have the bran and the germ in it, and those contain oil, and so the rancidity factor is greater with brown rice than it is with white rice that's had the bran and the germ removed. But this is still something that you can keep in your extended pantry and just rotate it into your working pantry if you like to have brown rice. It's not a forever food, but if it's got the right price and it's got a coupon and it's something that your family eats, this is great to have. And this is a basmati rice, but it's called Texmati because it's grown here in Texas. And that's something that I want to mention while we're discussing rice, is that, and not just rice, anything for that matter, look and see what may be grown in your state, and then see how the price compares to something that may be grown out of your state. Now, this is a non-perishable food, and so it's great. It's, I can put it in my extended pantry. But just as a tip in general, to give you an idea, in the winter, Texas is a big state, and we grow a lot of stuff here. In the spring, you can get peaches for a very reasonable price. In the winter, you can get citrus for a very reasonable price. I can get a big bag of, about 10-pound bag of Texas grapefruits for like $5. So look around and see. Now, that's a perishable item, but look around and see what is grown in your state and take advantage of that shopping seasonally and getting the best buy that you can. And if you're a canner, then you can can some of those foods and put them into your extended pantry. And here is also a little plastic container that I purchased of quinoa. So if you like sort of your alternative grains or your ancient grains, these are great to add to your prepper pantry, because grains in their whole form have a pretty good shelf life compared to if they had been ground up into some type of flour or a quick cooking mix in more of a boxed or prepackaged food. The more simple, the more plain you can buy something, the longer the shelf life. Now, dairy obviously is not the easiest thing to store in an extended pantry. You really need to find alternatives that are in a non-perishable form. So what I like to do is just keep some dry milk on hand. And this is more of a processed food because in order to dry just the traditional non-fat dry milk that's found at the grocery store, this is generally heated at a fairly high temperature. However, in an emergency, I think that this is a very good thing to have on hand. Now, as I said, this is non-fat dry milk, so this has a good shelf life. I also like to buy whole milk dried milk powder, but the shelf life on this is not as long because being that it's made from whole milk, there's more fat in here, and the fat is going to be more inclined to be tending to rancidity versus something that's non-fat. Although it has a pretty good shelf life overall, it could be 6 months, it could be a year. It really depends on what brand you're getting. And this is also low temp dried, so this is healthier. So in a pinch, this one works. If this is all you can find and you want to make sure that you have some type of dairy as a backup in your extended pantry, I think it's fine to add some non-fat dry milk. This is not something you're eating or drinking every single day. You know me, if my first choice is going to be raw milk. But definitely add some non-fat dry milk, and if you can find it, some whole milk, dried milk powder. And then for alternative milk sources, you can definitely have some coconut milk. Now, I like to get the coconut milk in the can. I've seen that it does also come in those, I'm not quite sure what they're called, they're just the sort of waxed boxes. They are non-perishable, but I think the coconut milk in the can has less ingredients. Sometimes those ones that are in those boxes have more additives or preservatives as opposed to in the cans. And you can look for cans that, if you're worried about, you know, what they may be lined with, this is just a brand right in the international section from my grocery store. And, you know, it says that the can that they're using is, you know, BPA free and lined with the appropriate ingredients so as to not affect the coconut milk in an unpalatable or unhealthy way. So definitely keep your eye open for that if you like coconut milk. As I said, I lean to what's in the can, and I think it also has a longer shelf life than what's sold in those boxes. And speaking of what's sold in those boxes, we'll move on to talking about bone broth. I'm not a fan, again, of those that are sold in those boxes because when I read the ingredients, they often have many more preservatives than what's sold in the jar. And so I tend to look for those bone broths that have very simple ingredients and are sold in jars. Now, is this anything like the bone broth we can make homemade? No. And should we always be making our bone broth homemade? Yes. But in an emergency, if you cannot make bone broth, then you can get some in a jar. And when it comes to bone broth, I tend to shy away from the chicken bone broth and the beef bone broths in the jar because if you've seen my video where I compare store-bought to homemade, when it comes to chicken bone broth and beef bone broth, I'm really not a fan of what's sold at the store. So what I rely on is fish bone broth. And this can come in very handy for making like a nice clam chowder. You can get some canned potatoes, some canned clams, and some fish bone broth, and you can pull together a lovely soup that'll fill everyone, and everybody will find it delicious. So my recommendation generally when you're trying to find those foods that replace things that are perishable, like our homemade bone broths, then fish bone broth is the one that I'm more inclined to lean to purchasing. And when it comes to bone broth, if you're making your bone broth homemade and you want to can it, you certainly can do that. You home can it. And bone broth needs to be pressure canned because it's a low acid food. But keep in mind that whenever you have to pressure can bone broth, whether it's from the store or something that you pressure can yourself at home, it does in essence, the expression I like to say is break the gelatin. But that's okay, because again, these are foods that you may be leaning on more in the case of an emergency. Now I'll use that fish bone broth. I'm not going to let it expire, and I'll rotate it through into my working pantry. And as I said, I'll probably, make a clam chowder. And then next time I'm out grocery shopping, I'll buy another bottle and I'll replace that into my extended pantry. If you do decide that you want to home can your bone broths, even though, yes, the gelatin may become damaged, that's okay, because these are just ones that you're relying on in a pinch, in an emergency. Now I just want to take a minute to talk about oats. Oats are a wonderful food. We eat them very regularly for breakfast. And you have a couple of options. You can get the steel cut oats, and again, both of these were from my grocery store. And these are an organic one. These are not organic, but this is a very nice brand that I like. But they are non-GMO, if that's of concern to you. And then there are your old-fashioned oats. Now, this is a big bag. And you can buy old-fashioned rolled oats in the canister at your grocery store. Sometimes they're sold in a bag. It really depends. These I got, I believe, at Costco. And they were very reasonably priced. I think it was like about $7 or so, which this is quite a large bag. And what's interesting about these are sprouted. And if you've been with me a while, we've had a lot of talks about sprouted grains versus unsprouted grains. And for some people, eating sprouted grains can be easier to digest and easier to assimilate nutrients. And yes, you can soak and sprout your own grains. It's very easy to do. It may sound a little intimidating in the beginning, but I have a video where I show you how to do it. You can soak and sprout and eat them as is, or you can soak and sprout and dry them, and then if you have a grain grinder, you can grind them and make your own sprouted flour. So there's a lot you can do. But the nice thing about buying sprouted old-fashioned oats that are in this flaked or this rolled form is to get them from the oat groat or the steel cut oat into this form. You need special equipment. I don't know if it's called like a grain roller or something like that. I don't have one. And you would need that tool in order to make old-fashioned rolled oats. So this is the type of thing that if you want rolled oats, just buy them. And you can buy regular ones, I said, or you can find these sprouted ones at Costco. Maybe Sam's has them too, I'm not sure. And I'm even starting to see these type of things becoming more common at grocery stores. So we live in a small town, and so I primarily shop at our local grocery store, which is H-E-B, which is great. They have everything. But periodically we drive into Austin, and we'll go to Costco or a Sam's or sometimes a Walmart. So I'm not as familiar with those on a regular basis, but if you are, keep your eye open, because I think the prices can be very attractive. And in addition to using these as cereal, they can be wonderful. They can be wonderful in baking, for making, where you can, I have a recipe for an oatmeal bread, and that video will be coming up a few weeks down the road. I think I have it planned, where I show you how to make an oatmeal bread just using non-perishable items from your extended pantry or your food storage or prepper pantry, whatever you want to call it. And so rolled oats or the oat groats, or in this case the steel cut oats, the oat groats is the actual whole oat, and that's a wonderful thing to have, because the less processed, the longer the shelf life. You can make bread, you can make cookies, you can also use oatmeal, and probably many of you know this, as a meal, a recipe in essence, or meal extender. You can add it when you're making an oatmeal, you can add it to your salmon cakes, you can add a little bit to hamburgers, and it can really help extend your proteins and go easy on your food budget. Now I want to mention in part 3, the next video that'll be coming up, I'm going to go over in more detail the prices of all of these things and how you can spend $5, an extra $5 to your grocery budget on a weekly basis. And over the course of a year, just adding $5 to your grocery budget every week, you can amass close to a year's worth of food. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And if you want, you can click the notification bell below, and then that will let you know when that video comes out. Alrighty, now I want to talk about just having some snack foods and some crackers and things like that. All of these have a fairly good shelf life. And having, you know, whatever, I love these sourdough wasses. And again, I try to find, even though, yes, these have more ingredients than just one ingredient, I try to find those that are enjoyable and things that we would, as a family, would enjoy eating, you know, if in an emergency situation or just on a regular basis as I'm replenishing the working pantry. And something that we like are graham crackers, and I think, yeah, these are from the 365 line at Whole Foods, which is their reasonable line, and these are very good graham crackers, and they have a good shelf life. This I just got at my local grocery store. You can get any crackers that you like, but I like these because the ingredients, I don't have my bifocals on, push things away from me, but this has just got whole grain rye flour, and then it's list rye flour. And when you see something listed like that, rye flour, that just means that they sifted out the bran and the germ to help make their final baked good lighter. But never worry about that. In essence, that's like an all-purpose rye flour. But this is not uncommon. This goes back into the Middle Ages or before, that often a little you know, we would add a little all-purpose flour, but they would sift their whole grain flour to get a little bit of the bran and the germ out so they could make a lighter baked good that would be more palatable as well as more digestible. So this is just whole grain rye flour, which is all-purpose rye flour, yeast, and salt. So, and it's a product of Sweden. But I love the wasses, so we always keep those on hand. Then some other things that actually, this is something that's new to me, but I thought that this was a great thing. I saw this last time when we went to Costco, and this was pretty reasonable. You know, packaged foods can be expensive, and I tend to not buy a lot of them. I try to make more things homemade. However, homemade may not always come in handy, and homemade may not always have the same shelf stability for your extended pantry. So I do like to pick up some things that I know have a good shelf life. And this I thought was interesting because these are just chickpeas that have been roasted. And they have 6 grams of protein to a serving. And there's not much ingredients other than the chickpea and some oil that they roasted it in, and some sea salt. So it's a pretty basic food, and this can be a very nice snack to munch on. And maybe if your other protein sources are running low in your extended pantry and you've not been able to get out to the grocery store, depending on what sort of extended amount of food that you do keep on hand. These have 6 grams of protein, so that's nothing to shake a stick at. And it was, you know, as I said, the packaged foods are more expensive. It was about $6, but I felt that given the amount of protein in it, was good to have that on hand. And these are the kinds of things that my family can snack on if for any reason I'm not able to cook. You know, wassa cracker with some sliced cheese from the refrigerator, graham crackers for a sweet treat, the chickpeas for some protein. I also like to keep a lot of dried fruit. We enjoy dried fruit. And these are figs, which are delicious. And these, I believe, I got at Costco. Then I keep here, these are some currants. You can keep raisins or currants. I use currants a lot in baking because they're a little smaller. And these I just got at my local grocery store. We also like dates. And so I've got some of these again. And we got these with a coupon. So I like coupons. And so these were a nice savings, but dates are great. And then having some nuts and seeds on hand. And these have about a year shelf life. So you definitely want to always remember to be rotating these out of your extended pantry. But I've got some shelled pistachios. any nuts you like, really, you can get. And then, again, these were sprouted. Now, can you sprout your own pumpkin seeds? Yes, it's very easy to soak and sprout and then dry them in the oven. And it makes them very easy to digest. But again, what if the situation arises where you're not able to purchase pumpkin seeds and you're not able then to soak and sprout them yourself if you don't have them, at home, and you can't get out maybe to go shopping? Having some on hand is great, and these are terrific sprinkled on top of your, just crush them up a little and sprinkle them on top of your oatmeal, and it makes a very filling, wonderful breakfast, along with maybe some of the canned pears. And there you've made a whole breakfast with all non-perishable items. Well, one thing I want to mention, this is a little bit of a diversion from the food to feed our family, but depending on how you think of your pets, to me they are family. But if you've seen my picture, I have a wonderful dog. She's a rescue. Her name's Obi, and we love her with all our heart. And I just want to mention, because I've got these sitting on the edge of my kitchen island, when you're adding food to your extended pantry, think of your pets and have a little extra dog food. In my case, a dog or a cat food, whatever animal you have, and a few extra treats, because just like us humans who enjoy an extra treat, especially if we might be going through a little bit of a stressful time, I think our pets enjoy a little treat too. And pet food is something that really holds up well in your extended pantry, because if you have the wet canned food or the dry food, you can transfer it to one of those airtight 5-gallon food safe buckets, and it can last a fairly good while. And also too, what I do is our dog particularly likes this particular brand of treat, and we just keep our eye open for when, I know this would come as a surprise to you, when they go on sale at our grocery store or they have a coupon with them. And the last couple of weeks they've been having these buy one, get one free. So I got a couple of bags, and this way I just add that to my extended pantry, and I know I'm not going to run out of her favorite snacks. Now, of course, I think along the lines of talking about dried beans, I think a lot of us think of pasta, dried pasta specifically, when we're thinking of stocking our prepper pantry. And this is a great thing to keep on hand. And what I do is I leave all of these in their boxes, but I put them into some of my 5-gallon food safe buckets, and then I add some of my food safe silica gel packs and some bay leaves, and I find that really helps keeping down any chance of these becoming infested with bugs, because these are not, pasta boxes are not airtight and they're not sealed in plastic. So they can be more, even though they may have a year or more shelf life, they can be more inclined to be susceptible to little crawly critters. So that can be a good way to store those in your extended pantry, and then also remembering to cycle them through into your working pantry. And I like to have all different types. I like to have spaghetti and different, I've got some penne, all different shapes and whatnot, to keep our meals interesting for when we do eat pasta. And then I believe I got these at Costco. And I generally like to make my own spaghetti sauce, but again, the whole theme of having your extended pantry is to always focus on what non-perishable foods you need as backups for things that you might make fresh. Now, I do like to make my own pasta sauce. I generally don't can my pasta sauce. I generally just can crushed tomatoes, and then from that I'll make pasta sauce. But what if we don't have power, or I'm just not up to it. Maybe I've got a cold or something like that, and I'm not up to making a homemade pasta sauce. I can just boil up some pasta, open one of these jars, and we've got a meal. Or this is the type of thing that's very easy for my family to do if for any reason I'm not able to cook. So I always like to have a couple of jars in my extended pantry of the store-made tomato sauce. And again, what I look for is something that has very wholesome and very you know, when you look at the ingredient list, it's pretty short and they're pretty wholesome. And these were, I think these are, yeah, these are organic. I was surprised. So that was a very nice find. And again, you don't need a lot if this is the type of thing that you do generally make homemade, but you want enough in your extended pantry in the event that you were not able to make it homemade. And the same goes for, I've got over here, a can of tomato paste. You can make your own tomato paste, but having some backup cans is really a smart idea. You can get it in the can, or you can, I really like getting it in these tubes. And again, I waited till I saw coupons at my grocery store. And you know, they have the type where they give you the, you can find them, you know, in the newspaper and stuff, or online. You know, I guess I'm dating myself saying in the newspaper, but, or, you know, coupons online. But my grocery store puts out a lot of coupons. They're just hanging up and down the aisles. And when I saw a coupon for this, it was like $1 off, sometimes more. I'll just pick up a tube and I'll add it to my pantry. The same with dried tomatoes. I can make my own. I'll grow them in my garden, and I can dry my own tomatoes. But having some that have already been dried in the event that maybe I don't get a good harvest, and maybe I don't see any at the farmer's market, maybe we're in a drought, whatever the case may be. And being able to have some dried tomatoes to make a nice little quick dish with all foods that are coming right out of the working pantry or the extended pantry is wonderful. So definitely think of getting some, you know, sun-dried tomatoes. And all of these things have a great shelf life. Next, some of the things that I want to talk about are condiments and seasonings and all sorts of things like this. Now, can a lot of these things be made homemade? Yes, and I know I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but again, I like to keep some on hand for my extended pantry in the event that I can't make these things homemade. Now, olives. These are wonderful, and these, I got these at Costco. If you've never tried these, they're stuffed with garlic and jalapeno. Oh my goodness, they are so delicious. We were there, last time we were there, we picked up a couple of jars of these because I think one day, within 2 or 3 days, my husband and I had finished a whole jar. But these are great if you like olives, and with them being stuffed with the garlic, you don't notice that, and the jalapeno. That jalapeno kind of compensates for the garlic. So if you're not a fan of eating raw garlic, I highly recommend this, especially during cold and flu season, because it's a great way to get your garlic. And then with the mayonnaise, again, I think I got this at Costco too. You can make homemade mayonnaise, and I've showed you how to do this, and I do that on a regular basis. But what if I can't get fresh eggs? What if I can't make homemade mayonnaise? Having a jar in the extended pantry is fantastic. And at my grocery store, they sell the smaller jars as well. And I like this one because, again, with all of these, I try to look for those store-bought products that have the least amount of ingredients in them, and also the most wholesome ingredients. And I like this one because it's made with avocado oil. I try to avoid things made with soybean oil. I find that's a very highly processed oil. And so this is made with avocado oil, and as I said, I got a good buy on this at Costco. And my husband really likes Thousand Island dressing. So even though I make homemade ketchup, that's actually a fermented ketchup. And again, I'll put links to all of these videos with the printable recipe in the description below. And the same with relish. So these 3 ingredients, boom, 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 and I can make a lovely Thousand Island dressing. Again, all with things from the extended pantry. So if I don't have any of my homemade ketchup or my homemade mayonnaise or a homemade relish, I've got these as backups, and they can really save the day. And the same with the apple cider vinegar. As you know, we make a lot of a homemade apple cider vinegar here, and I've shared that with many of you, in the various videos where I've showed you how to make apple cider vinegar. But I always like to keep a jar or 2 on hand because in my humble opinion, I think the apple cider vinegar that's homemade is the best and the richest in good probiotics. And so I like to use that in preparations where it's not going to be heated, so that we really preserve the goodness in the homemade apple cider vinegar. Now this is raw and it has the mother and all of that, but it's also very reasonably priced at my grocery store. So I like to have a bottle or two in my extended pantry that I use whenever I'm soaking grains, because I'll often soak my grains, again, to increase digestibility and nutrient absorption. And, you know, I've covered this in a lot of other videos. But when I do that, for example, when I soak my oatmeal overnight before cooking it the next day, I'll use this as my vinegar to acidulate the water rather than my homemade vinegar. So that's another wonderful thing. And if you don't make it homemade, put this in your extended pantry. Olive oil. Again, we're blessed. We live in the hill country in Texas, and we are loaded with olive ranches, as they're called, and wineries too. It's a lot, very similar. It's very hilly with lakes, and we have wineries and olive ranches mixed in with cattle ranches and goat farms and all kinds of things. But we grow a lot of our own olives here. Not me specifically, but we meaning Central Texans here in the hill country. And so I can buy olive oil basically right down the street. In like that town or two over where there's an olive ranch. And so I always like to have a nice supply. This is a California olive oil. I always like to have a nice supply of olive oil. Now, olive oil does have, you know, a higher rancidity than some of your longer shelf life oils or fats like coconut oil and ghee, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I go through a lot of olive oil. So I'll have one bottle in my working pantry, and then I'll have one bottle in my extended or prepper pantry. And then also, speaking of condiments, I always like, even though, yes, I like to make homemade fermented mustard, and I'll be sure to put that video link in the description below, also where you can get the printable, all of these have printable recipes. But I like to keep something on hand. So if I've not had a chance to make it, or I just run out and I don't have mustard seeds or whatever the case may be, I've got one of these. And I'll usually just have like one, you know, something like this that I don't necessarily need a lot of. I might just have one in my extended pantry. If you use a lot of mustard and you don't make your own mustard, then keep maybe 2 or 3 in your extended pantry and just pick up an extra one, you know, each time that you go grocery shopping. You know, and I always like to say 1 or 2, because in video 1, if you've not had a chance to see that, I really like to talk about what it means to be a prepper. And a prepper is a responsible person who has a plan and puts that plan into action over the long haul. A prepper is not a hoarder. We don't go to the store at the minute of an emergency and clean out the shelves and leave nothing for anybody else. It's quite the opposite. People who like to prepare have a plan and implement that plan over time, just adding 1 or 2 items to their regular grocery list as they build their prepper pantry. So that's why I always say, you know, pick up 1, 2, whatever, and leave plenty for everybody else. And then another thing I always have, for those of you who have maybe met my husband in the past, he's been in a few videos, he's of Asian descent, and so I always need to make sure that we have a lot of soy sauce on hand. And I like this soy sauce because this is an unpasteurized soy sauce, so it's a fermented food, it's a real food, and it doesn't need to be refrigerated, and it's wonderful to keep in your extended pantry if you like to have soy sauce, and it is delicious. And as I said, we love that little simple meal of kippers, rice, and some of this soy sauce. And 2 other fats that are great for the extended pantry are coconut oil and ghee. Ghee is basically just a form of clarified butter where the milk solids are removed. And then this has a very long shelf life. Some people consider this a forever food. I don't know about that, but it definitely has a very long shelf life thanks to those milk solids being removed. And not just when this is a brand new jar, not just when it's sealed, even after you open it. I just keep this in my working pantry. I don't refrigerate it, and it smells and tastes as fresh as the day that I opened it. So definitely think about this. If you like butter, but you need something that can replace butter that's non-perishable, ghee or clarified butter, whichever one you see at your grocery store, is a wonderful thing to put in your extended pantry. The same with coconut oil. Coconut oil is solid like this at room temperature, and this has a very long shelf life. And I tend to buy, because we're a small family, I do tend to buy these smaller sizes, and I might just have 1 or 2 in my extended pantry because I know that will see us through. And we'll talk about calculating how to know how much that you're going to need for your family, and depending on what size family you have. But you can buy this in big buckets. And again, you know, some people consider it a forever food. You know, again, I don't know about that, but I do know that it has a very long shelf life. And I've opened coconut oil, you know, I've opened it and had it in my pantry and haven't used very much of it, because when I can use fresh butter, I will. And I also like ghee. But I'll open it like in 5 years. It still smells and tastes as good as the day I opened it. So I think that's got a pretty long shelf life. And in the first video, I talked about how to build your list in order to create your prepper pantry. And just for a quick review, what you want to do is look at what you buy on a weekly basis. What do you buy on non-perishable items and perishable items. Transfer all those non-perishable items on your list to what I like to call your prepper pantry grocery list. And then look at all your perishable items and try to think of substitutes for those that are non-perishable, like fresh string beans versus canned string beans. And then add those non-perishable substitutions to your pantry, your prepper pantry grocery list. And then when you go grocery shopping, you'll have your main grocery list for whatever you buy over the course of the week. And then you'll have your prepper pantry list. And then you can just say, okay, well, this week I'll add a couple of extra cans of green beans, or I'll add a bag of rice, or a couple of cans of beans, or maybe a bag of dried beans, whatever the case may be. And you just check that off. And then you know, once you've got everything checked off of your prepper pantry grocery list, you have 1 week's worth of extra food. And then you just start all over again. And when your list is filled again, all checked off, you've got 2 weeks of food in your prepper pantry. And if you want something where you can really calculate long term, there are plenty of websites on that, and I'll be sure to put a link for the one that I like in the description below. And you basically put in how many adults are in your household and how many children you have in your household under 12, and then it calculates for you how many of everything you need, like how much pasta you'd need, how much, spaghetti sauce, how much wheat you'd need, and so on and so forth. The only reason that I don't always rush to use those is because it can be a little overwhelming when you look at how much food you will need for the course of a year, maybe to feed a family of 4. I find just looking at what you buy in 1 week for your family, and then using that as your guide to build up a 1 additional week's supply of food, I just find it mentally a little easier to handle, so to speak. But I'll definitely put those resources in the description below. Well, I think another thing that we think of for the prepper pantry after beans and pasta is peanut butter. This is a wonderful thing to keep in your pantry. And if you like peanut butter, and I do, and so does my husband. And we found at Costco, and this is great. It was 2 peanut butters, and it was organic, and it's just peanuts and salt. So it's in a very simple, real food form. And again, this is rich in protein, so this is another good thing to keep, on hand in the event that your animal proteins are running low. And also along those lines, I've got some tahini here, which is, it's ground sesame seeds. It's similar in a way, to the consistency of peanut butter. And this can be great just eaten as is. but also mashed with some chickpeas. If you have power, you could use your food processor or your blender. But if you don't have any power, you can take a little bit of this, mash up some chickpeas, and you've got a hummus, as I said earlier. And then also I love I have such a weak spot for jams and jellies, and I make my own, and I've shared with you many different varieties, low sugar, no sugar, without pectin, the way our grandmothers made it. But I also like to keep some store-bought jams. And the reason I like to keep some store-bought jams on hand, as I said, they do make a nice sweet treat. But also, this Fisher & Weiser is just down the street in Fredericksburg. And they make all kinds of lovely jams and jellies and whatnot. And their peach preserves are just wonderful, as we grow a lot of peaches here in the Texas Hill Country. And they actually sell this in this large size at Costco. So I don't know if this would be in Costco's around the country, since this is a very local item. But I definitely like keeping some jams and jellies on hand, whether you make and can your own or you have a few store-bought, because, everybody loves, or at least I do, peanut butter and a jam sandwich or peanut butter and jelly. And this is the type of food that I really feel for many of us is a comfort food. And, if there's bad weather or job loss or illness and, you're just feeling, a little down about something, having a little sweet treat can really lift everybody's spirits. Also, having some honey on hand is terrific because, not only for medicinal purposes, if you have a cold or a cough, honey can really make you feel better. And local, all the better. This is a local honey. And this is a very solid type honey. I really like this type of honey. But a pourable honey comes in very handy too. And again, if you can get local, that's wonderful. This is actually honey from my husband's cousin who raises bees and gives us honey. And this is a nice pourable honey. So if you're working on a particular recipe or something that calls for honey, or you want something that's very easy to just pour into a little bit of tea or something like that, having a pourable honey on hand, and again, local, is just wonderful if you can get it, all the better. And honey basically is a forever food. It's going to last forever. And so it's a wonderful item to have in your prepper pantry. In the video that I mentioned earlier, which I'll link to below, where I talk about the 10 best forever foods, one of them is honey. So this can definitely be part of your extended pantry that you definitely rotate into your working pantry, but this can also be part of your survival pantry if you want to have a little section devoted to those foods that you just keep on hand in the event of a very big emergency. Also in that same genre are maple syrup and molasses. And this, I think I also got this one at Costco, and which they had a very good price on it. I don't remember exactly, but in the next video I'll definitely go over all the prices of the amounts of things and what you can do to really stay within your budget. But maple syrup and molasses are very nutritious. Molasses has a lot of iron in it. And what I recommend, you'll see, I got this on clearance at my grocery store for $1.43. So if you have a clearance section in your grocery store, be sure to swing by there whenever you do your grocery shopping, because you never know what you'll find. And these, again, they're very long, these are basically forever foods as well. So these are wonderful for your extended pantry. Now, one thing I want to mention, in this series, my primary focus is on food for your prepper pantry. But there are a lot of other things that you can keep in your pantry, your extended pantry, in order to be prepared for whatever may arise. And that would include household supplies, as well as medical supplies, like first aid type supplies. And luckily, all of those responsibilities fall on my husband. But things that you want to think about are your paper products that you might need, your bath tissue, your Kleenex. Think about batteries, think about Band-Aids and antiseptic ointments and so on and so forth. So definitely keep that in mind as well when you're shopping and when you're putting your pantry prepper grocery list together. As you go up and down those various aisles that carry those products at your grocery store, think about what you'll want to add to your extended pantry, and so that you just have to buy one or two at a time, and you can build up the supply that you need so that when an emergency does happen, you're not rushing to the grocery store and then finding the shelves empty. Now here I want to talk about beverages. Obviously, one of the most important things to have in an extended pantry is water. And some sources will recommend to have a half a gallon per person per day. I like to think about having a gallon per person per day. And that way you have a little wiggle room for not only water that needs to be drank throughout the day, but water that you can use to cook with and water that you can use for personal hygiene. So thinking about that as you put together your list for how many weeks or months of backup food and supplies you want to have, think about how much water per person you would want to have per day. Now, I don't keep a lot of juice on hand. We don't drink a lot of juice. If I'm going to have fresh orange juice in the winter months when I can buy fresh citrus at a nice price, and just juice some oranges, that can be fun to enjoy. But generally we don't drink a lot of juice. But I do like to keep some bottled juice on hand in my extended pantry for those times when I might want some juice. And then what I do is I think about what type of juice I would like to have. And I tend to keep tart cherry juice on hand, and also 100% cranberry juice that doesn't have any sugar. That's very tart. And the reason is they can really serve somewhat of a medicinal purpose. Tart cherries are apparently, as I understand it from scientists, is that it's high in melatonin, and if you're having trouble sleeping, a little tart cherry juice can help you get to sleep. So I like to keep some of that on hand. And cranberry juice can be especially in its natural 100% cranberry juice state, can be very helpful diluted with some water and drank throughout the day if you feel any like urinary tract infection coming on or something like that. So a little bit of bottled juice in your extended pantry can be a good idea. Next, both my husband and I are big coffee drinkers, and you may have guessed by the fact that I do have 2 coffee pots. That sort of started during this quarantine process when we've had a full house, and I've needed to make sure that I had 2 coffee pots up and running in the morning. But I really think that I'm going to keep that even as things go back to normal, because I really like caffeinated coffee and my husband prefers decaf. I was just going along with him and taking the decaf, but now having these 2 coffee pots and having that caffeinated coffee in the morning has really been a treat. So what I like to keep in my pantry, both my working pantry and my extended pantry, is plenty of coffee. And I can buy this right at my local grocery store, or I've also seen this at Costco. And I like this Rudamaya coffee. It's very tasty. And then over here, I've got this again. This one came from Costco. Sometimes we get the Rudamaya decaf at our local grocery store, but you can't always find it. So when we had went into town last and went to Costco, I found this decaf. And both of these are the beans because they have the longer shelf life. So I'll have, a bag of each of these in my working pantry, and I'll just grind them up as we need them. And then I'll have a bag or 2 of each in my extended pantry. Also, my husband is a Texan, and so he really enjoys a lot of iced tea. So this is something that I really do stock up a lot on. I probably buy 1 box of this every time I go to the grocery store, so that I have a good backup supply, because tea, and these are specific tea bags for making iced tea, which is what he likes. And I like to make sure that I have a good supply on hand, both in my working pantry and my extended pantry. And the nice thing about tea is Yes, it can lose some of its efficacy, or its taste over time, but sealed up like this, it really does have a long shelf life. And so I will always make sure I have a lot of this in my extended pantry. So that's one of those things that's on my list to buy every week. And then I also enjoy having some herb tea. And again, these are the kinds of things that it's really, how much do you think you're going to drink and how much do you want to keep in your extended pantry? But that is both regular tea and herb teas have pretty good shelf lives. Then, just as an emergency backup, I do like to keep these freeze-dried coffees. And I've got the decaf, and then over here, I've got, and these are both from my grocery store, I have the regular. So I feel that this way, in case we were in a situation where we ran out of the coffee beans and I wasn't able to get to the store or a budget was too tight, to buy coffee, because coffee does lean on a little more expensive side, we would at least have our freeze-dried coffee. And I know to coffee aficionados, this may be insulting to recommend, but my attitude is a little coffee is better than no coffee. And basically, these fall into that forever food category. These can last forever, as long as they're unopened. Now, these are actually homemade mixes, but I want to talk about these for a minute because these are very good to have in your extended pantry. And I have a video coming out in a few weeks. I'm not sure exactly when I have it planned, but I've already filmed it. And it's all about how to make ahead mixes. And all 4 of these are baking mixes, and this one is a pancake mix. And these have a relatively good shelf life. If they're made with whole grains, they can last about 6 months to 1 year. If they're made with all-purpose flour, or whole grain flours, and if they're made with all-purpose flour, they can last 1 to 2 years. And I'll put these in my extended pantry, and they've got, I don't know if you can tell, I think they're all submerged, but I put food-safe silica gel packs in, which really help keep the moisture out. And I just have the twist lids, the screw top lids on them right now, because I do use these up pretty quickly. But you can also put a canning lid on these and use one of those Food Saver handheld devices and suck out a lot of the air, which will help to even further extend the shelf life. But if you can make ahead mixes, these come in very handy, because say you want to make brownies, rather than keeping those boxes of packaged, food brownie mixes from the grocery store on hand, which often have like a lot of chemicals in them, as well as the basic flour and chocolate ingredients, make your own brownie mix. And keep this in your extended pantry. And then when you want to make brownies, you've got your mix. And you can just scoop out some of this and keep this in your working pantry and then put this back into your extended pantry. So watch out for that video. And that'll be coming up in a few weeks. I highly recommend learning how to make your own make-ahead mixes, because these can come in very handy. And just like, canning your own fruits and vegetables, having your own make-ahead mixes is a wonderful thing to think about. And this is kind of easier to do if you're not a canner. Having things like this on hand are a little easier to make and are a nice way to stock your prepper pantry, and for a reasonable price and without buying pre-packaged mixes. And just talking about canning, one thing I want to mention is if you are a canner, I know people have been talking about how it's been really hard to find canning lids. And what I recommend is, if you are a canner, when you go grocery shopping, on your regular grocery trip, and canning supplies I'm confident will come back into stock and whatnot. And when you're grocery shopping, just buy 1 box of lids. Buy either wide mouth lids or the little regular size mouth lids, depending on what you tend to can the most, or just alternate. And every time you're out grocery shopping, just pick up 1 pack. If you do that, and they're very reasonable, and when they're in stock, I've heard some stories lately, but generally they're very reasonable. And this way you'll have plenty of lids, and you don't need to sort of have to, in an emergency, be going to a lot of different stores or looking online and trying to find them, or buying a lot. Just buy 1 pack, and then over time you'll build up your supply, this can be part of your extended prepper pantry. And that way, whenever you're ready to can, you've got some lids. Now, in addition to your baking mixes, another mix I have here, and I've also got this video, should be coming out pretty soon too, so keep an eye out for it. If you haven't hit the notification bell, you can hit that or click on it, and then you'll get a notification when my videos come out. But this is a homemade cream of soup mix, and again, this has a very good shelf life. And this is a wonderful thing to have, because whenever you want to make a casserole, in place of using the canned soup, the condensed cream of whatever, cream of mushroom or cream of chicken, you can just use your own dry mix that you have in your extended pantry. And the reason I like this is a very natural option. Often the ingredients in those canned cream of soup mixes have a lot of chemicals in them as well. So again, I like to keep things as simple and as quote-unquote real food, or as close to real food as possible. And so definitely look for that video, having a homemade cream of soup mix in your pantry, both your working pantry and your extended pantry, and that's just a food-safe silica gel pack in there to keep the moisture out, is a wonderful option to keep on hand. And when you're making that, this recipe that I have here calls for bouillon powder. And again, you can make so much of this stuff homemade. This is, I only have a little bit left of here, but this is one of my homemade bouillon powders. And I have a lot of videos where I show you how to make beef bouillon powder, chicken bouillon powder, vegetable bouillon powder. Very easy to make. And again, I'll be sure to link to those in the description below. But learning how to make your own bouillon powder, basically all you do is take bone broth or stock, whatever you have, and you don't need any special equipment. You don't need a dehydrator. You can dry all this right in your oven and then just grind it up in your blender, or if you have one of those little tiny grinders, and you've got your own bouillon. Then you control what's in it. You know that this is made from broth or stock or bone broth that you made, and you don't have to add any salt if you don't want to. You've got control over it. And if you ever look at the list of ingredients in those bouillons that are sold at the grocery store, yikes. So when it comes to real food, start making your own bouillon, start making your own cream of soup mix, start making your own make-ahead mixes, and you're all set. I mean, this right here, these are all lifesavers for your extended pantry and your working pantry. Now, another thing for your extended pantry are various herbs and spices and peppercorns and salt. All those basic seasonings and whatever seasonings you like to have on hand are great for an extended pantry, because these things have very long shelf lives. And I've had people, even though they'll put, I'm not sure where it is on here, they'll put what the expiration is. And they'll say, oh, it may not be fresh after 6 months or a year or 2 years, whatever the case may be. But I've had people tell me that they've had their spices and herbs for ages and they're just fine. So I think that these things can last pretty long. And if I have a big herb garden and I love oregano and I grow a lot of it and I can dry it and whatnot, but I also like to keep something in my extended pantry in the event that something happened in my herb garden, or if we were under a really severe drought and things didn't grow as well as they normally do. Having some backup supplies of dried herbs and dried spices, I really like to do that, in addition to anything I grow and dry myself. So again, this is sort of like with canned food. You may can a lot of your own food, but you may also want to have some backups of store-bought canned food. That's kind of how I think of herbs and spices. And definitely peppercorns I have to buy. I'm not getting any peppercorns in my garden. But that leads us kind of into talking about things that you bake with. Now here, I just have a big bag of white sugar. This will last me a long time, and I'll keep this in a 5-gallon bucket, food-safe bucket, and I'll keep it closed until I actually need to use it. Sugar's going to last forever, especially white sugar. And I feel it's important to have a little white sugar on hand. If you want to make a low-sugar jam, I generally, will make them with white sugar. Sometimes if you want to give a little boost to your sourdough starter, a little white sugar can help with that. And there are different preparations where having some white sugar on hand for baking or for other things you might be making, it's good to have on hand. I don't recommend having a lot. I mean, this is plenty. This is going to last me a long time. And I think, yeah, this came from Costco. And so again, you have to gauge how much you think that you're going to need. But for our family, I just have one bag in my extended pantry and one bag in my working pantry, and that's plenty. Now, I already talked about the honeys and the maple syrup and so on and so forth. I like to have alternative whole sweeteners on hand. And this is, if you've been with me a while, you've probably heard me talk a lot about sucanat. It stands for sugarcane natural. They just take the first few letters of each word, sugarcane natural, and that's sucanat. And I like this because this is very great for using in pretty much any preparation where you would use white sugar. But this, instead of having all the nutrients removed, this has all of the nutrients in place. So this is a more nutritious option. Now you can also put, I'll have, you know, a couple of bags of this in my extended pantry, and then I'll have one in my working pantry. And you can also have maple sugar, you can have date sugar, you can have coconut sugar. These are all great alternative whole sweeteners, and they also have wonderful shelf lives. So think of that, you know, when you're thinking of sweeteners that you need. Also in the whole baking arena, I like to keep some, my grain there, I like to keep some cocoa powder on hand. And I really like to just keep the plain whole cocoa powder because this is so versatile. And again, it's a whole food. It's not, it doesn't have a lot of added sugar. You can control what sugar you want to add to this and how much. If you want to use it in baking, if you want to make a chocolate syrup, if you want to make a little chocolate milk, you know, there's so many things, or hot cocoa. There are so many things that you can do with just a plain, simple cocoa powder. So I highly recommend, you know, having, you know, if you've got this in your working pantry, make sure that you've got some in your extended pantry too, because that, and this again, you know, this got a good shelf life, so you don't have to worry. And then along those lines, you know, I really like the SAF instant yeast when it comes to baking, so having that on hand. You can buy yeast in small little packages if you don't do a lot of baking. This has got a good shelf life as long as it's completely sealed. It's like a little hard brick like this. And I actually keep this in my freezer, but I would be very comfortable also having this in my extended pantry. And once you open it, you can get an airtight jar that you can put it in and try to keep it as fresh as you can for as long as you can. And then other things you want to keep on hand, baking powder. I keep this in my working pantry as well as my extended pantry. Baking soda, I just have it in a little jar here because I buy this in a really big bag. I'll buy that at Costco or Sam's, depending where I find it. And it's very reasonable to buy a large amount like that. And again, you know, to me, baking soda, you can test it with a little vinegar, and if it bubbles up, you know that it's still fresh. And I've found that it can last a very long time. So that's something, again, you know, for both your working pantry and then to have a backup supply in your extended pantry. Cornstarch. This is a great thickener, and this is an organic, non-GMO, if that concerns you. And this, I just found this at my local grocery store. And so cornstarch is another wonderful thing to have on hand. And this can really serve multiple purposes, not just in the kitchen for food and baking, but in place of any kind of, if you needed, you know, today the talcum powders are not so common. A lot of them are made from some sort of cornstarch, but you don't even really need anything fancy like that. And especially if you don't like the ones that are sold in the, you know, health and beauty section that have fragrance in them, you can just use regular cornstarch like this, and it can work very well, you know, for absorbing moisture. Also, you got to have some cornmeal. And this is stone ground yellow cornmeal that's right from here in Texas. You can also have the whole corn, in its natural form, the corn kernel, the dried corn kernel, which will have even a longer shelf life. That's a wonderful thing to keep in your extended pantry if you have a grain grinder. So that's something to think about going forward if you don't own one right now. And speaking of that, I have an unboxing where I showed you when I purchased my mock mill, which is a very reasonably priced yet very high quality grain grinder. And they gave me a discount coupon code for people who are my viewers. So be sure to check that. I'll have that in the description below if that's something you eventually want to add to your kitchen. So it helps with the price with a discount coupon code. But in any event, having some stone ground cornmeal, again, any grain, whole grain that has been ground is only going to have like a 6 month to a year shelf life because it's got all of the natural oils in it which are more inclined to rancidity. So if you do have this in your extended pantry, and I think it's a good thing to have, especially if you're looking at a 2 or 3 or 6 month supply of food, just rotate it out, especially if you make a lot of cornbread or corn muffins, whatever the case may be. And along the lines of corn, I don't have this here, but popcorn, but before it's been popped, the whole kernel popcorn, that's actually a forever food. That lasts forever. And so that's a wonderful thing to have in your extended pantry, and even in your survival pantry, the part that you devote to your survival food in your extended pantry. And it's a nice treat, pop it in a little coconut oil, and that can be a wonderful thing, and put a little sea salt on it. You can really enjoy that. So keep that in mind. Then also, I should have showed you this when I was talking about more of these basic baking things, but this is vanilla extract. This also has an indefinite shelf life, and this is just homemade type. And it's very easy to make, and vanilla extract lasts forever when you make it homemade. And I have a video where I show you how to do that, and I'll be sure to link to that in the description. And again, if I run out of space in the description, don't worry. There'll be a link to my website. You can just click on that and head over there, and I'll have all the information over there. But vanilla extract is a wonderul thing. Make a lot of it and keep some in your working pantry, and have your main, I forget what I call it. It's the one where it just goes on perpetual. Have your perpetual vanilla extract in your extended pantry, and just keep decanting what you need for your working pantry, and then top off your perpetual extract with a little more. I use vodka because it has no flavor, so you really get the flavor of the vanilla extract, of the vanilla beans coming through. And just top it off and leave it there for another 6 months, and then decant what you need once again. So wonderful item for your extended pantry. And then here is whole grain. I can't say enough good things about whole grain. This is actually einkorn, which is an ancient grain. But you can have wheat berries, you can have rye berries, you can have einkorn, you can have spelt berries, whatever type of flour you like. Now, yes, you're going to need something to grind your grain if you want to turn this into flour. And I believe, I mentioned the mock mill, but I think some of the high-speed blenders now have either a special attachment or something. I'm not exactly sure because I don't have one. But I gather that you can grind grain in those, like a Vitamix, if you have the special grain grinding attachment. You can also get a grain grinder attachment. One is made by Mock Mill. There might be others that are made if you have a KitchenAid stand mixer. So there are some options, but also just keeping whole grain on hand, even if you're not looking to grind it to make flour, then to make baked goods. Keeping whole grain on hand is a wonderful food source because the shelf life of whole grain that's not been ground yet is very long. And you can soak this and then cook it as a grain that you eat. Or you can soak it and go one more step and sprout it and then eat it in that form if you want something that's even more digestible. So really look for sources where you can get whole grain. You can buy them online. They're becoming more and more common at your grocery store, especially in your bulk section. You should definitely, if your grocery store has a bulk section, you should definitely be able to find wheat berries and maybe oat groats, which are the whole oat. Those I've seen at my local grocery store. It's becoming more and more common. So definitely add whole grains to your extended pantry. Oh, and I just want to go back and mention one thing about Mock Mill. They have never sponsored any of my videos. I really have nothing to do with the company, and I purchased my Mock Mill for full price, and I was so pleased with it that, and being, you know, someone who's a traditional foods cooker aficionado, I was so pleased with it that I contacted them to see if they could give me a coupon code for my viewers, so that if you ever decided that you wanted to buy one, you could get the discount. But I paid full price, but I'm very happy with it. But yeah, other than that, I have nothing to do with the company, and they've not sponsored any of my videos. I just wanted to let you know that. But in any event, the last item that I want to talk to you about is flour. Now, when it comes to flour, if you want to stock a whole grain flour in your extended pantry, you need to be conscious of it, and you need to rotate it regularly into your working pantry, because whole grain flour, I know some people will say it'll last a year, but I think once it's been ground, you do need to be careful, because you've got all that bran and germ in there, and they're rich in oils, and those oils can go rancid. And I like to think of them as staying optimally fresh for about 6 months. However, if you buy all-purpose flour or bread flour that's had the bran and the germ sifted out of it, these have a much longer shelf life. And this can be in your extended pantry anywhere from a year to 2, or some people say even longer. They'll put this in their 5-gallon food-safe buckets. They'll put in their silica gel packs, and they feel that and those buckets are airtight, and they feel that the flour stays fresh for a fairly long time. And you're not having to so much worry about rancidity, because the bran and the germ have been sifted out of it. More what you need to be concerned about is it just developing, you know, a stale or musty flavor. But if you work at keeping it as sealed and fresh as possible, it could have a very long shelf life. And I bought both of these. They come together. And I bought this at Costco, and this was $11.89, and that's a total of 20 pounds of all-purpose flour, and it's organic, which was very nice. They also had a 25-pound bag that was about $13 and change, so that's something that you could also consider getting. But I always recommend having some type of all-purpose flour or bread flour, which is also, it's just a little higher in protein, but also has the bran and the germ sifted out of it, in your working pantry and your extended pantry. And the reason is these are wonderful for making sourdough starters, and then for making your sourdough bread. So, and making sourdough is a wonderful way to take a all-purpose or bread flour and enrich the nutrients by making a sourdough bread out of it. So definitely think about adding all-purpose flour to your extended pantry. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed me going over all of these things. And now be sure to hit the notification bell below so that you don't miss out on tomorrow's video, where I'm going to talk about shopping for these things in $5 amounts and how to build your pantry over the course of a year. And if you click on this video over here, you can learn all about my pantry list and how you can download and print out your own copy. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country Kitchen. Love and God bless.